bankruptcy is not something that's for the faint of heart. It's a public declaration of failure, of defeat, but it's an avenue, it's a legal process that is afforded to you to get a second chance.
I'm here in an airplane hangar at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport with the CEO of Delta Airlines, Ed Bastian. Ed, great to see you.
Alan, good to be with you.
Quite a spread you have here.
Yeah, this is, it's a little noisy. Hopefully it'll come across well on the podcast, but this is our largest maintenance hangar that we have in our system. Candidly, it's the largest maintenance hangar in all of North America. And at Delta,
Really?
we do as many engines for other airlines as we do for ourselves here. So it's a big source of third-party growth, over $1 billion a year of revenue for Delta.
Well, hopefully the engines won't be revving too much while we're talking. The other reason you and I are talking today, of course, is that Delta and the Wall Street Journal have a new partnership that I want to talk about, but I'd like to talk about you first, if you're okay with that. You and I have known each other for a while. I've watched your career for a long time. You have weathered more challenges and crises than almost anyone I can think of. I mean, you were here when 9/11 hit, which was a disaster for the airline industry. You were here for the big merger, bankruptcy. COVID was a huge crisis. You had a massive computer outage a couple of years ago. I'm just curious, of all of those things, you're now 10 years in as CEO.
Right.
What do you see as the biggest leadership challenge you faced?
Reflecting on the close to 30 years I've been in this business, I think the biggest lesson, I'll start there, is humility. Is you understand that this is a tough business.
Yeah.
And this is a business that you continue to have to get better at. And you can never say that you've got it mastered. So there's something we say at Delta, we've said for many years, our motto is to keep climbing. And to always keep growing and keep learning and keep aspiring and keep focused on where we're going. Obviously, those crises and those points of this differentiation, kind of the crisis that we've seen with fuel prices just in the last number of months.
Sure.
Either they can make you stronger, or they can make you fall back to the pack. And we've always tried through learning, through humility, to try to take from whatever we've encountered, become more resilient, to become more differentiated, become more distinctive in how we deliver our service.
Well, let's talk about the specifics of some of those crises. I mean, starting with 9/11, you were in the finance department at the time. You left the airlines.
I did.
Why?
Well, I wasn't confident that the company, Delta, was going to be true to its values. Delta, at that point in time, when 9/11 happened, had an investment-grade balance sheet. It was seen as a stalwart. It was one of the most admired companies in Fortune's listing, your old employer. And the leadership team around 9/11, several years heading into 9/11, had changed at Delta. And they brought in a lot of new talent because Delta was very much a homegrown culture. Actually, I was one of the first vice presidents ever hired from outside the company. But there was too much. There were a number of people there in leadership roles that candidly had never seen anything like this, and actually started to isolate rather than run towards the fire. And as a result of that, the company had lost touch with its people, was losing touch with its values, and was headed probably in a pretty dark place.
And so you left, and what got you back?
Well, my CEO who I left, Jerry Grinstein, who had come in to make changes at the company, but I wasn't confident he was making changes fast enough, reached out to me, personally assured me that he was going to give me an opportunity to have my voice heard, to lean into what is needed to make this company great, meaning leaning it back into the people, the culture, the values of the company, and start to focus on the return to operational excellence, the return to service that Delta was known for.
I read that one of the things you said in that conversation is we have to declare bankruptcy.
Yes.
Why?
We had to get past it. Bankruptcy is not something that's for the faint of heart. It's a public declaration of failure, of defeat, but it's an avenue, it's a legal process that is afforded to you to get a second chance. And the company deserved a second chance. At that point, the company was 75 years old, had been through a lot of crises. I felt that if we were just going to continue on the path we were on, Delta would have liquidated. Most airlines over time.
Sure, Pan Am, there's a long list of them.
And we needed to get out ahead of it and use the tools available to us, make changes, make the hard decisions, but come out the other end stronger.
So I want to fast forward a little bit to 2016, 10 years ago, when you became CEO. What was your theory of the case at that time? What did you think you wanted to do as CEO of Delta?
We were on a good path at that point, a path of breaking out of the pack. You know, the airlines historically were a commodity business.
Yeah.
When I joined the company 30 years ago, if you were to ask consumers, why did you pick a specific airline for your travel? Over 80% of the people would say it was whoever had the lowest price.
That was the only differentiator.
There was no other real. Loyalty wasn't a big factor. Even convenience, the schedule wasn't a major factor. It was price. And if price was going to be the long-term reason why consumers chose Delta, we had no business model. We were doomed to failure. We had to be different. We had a distinct, we're a big global airline. Our people do more. We're a premium brand, but not recognized in the eyes of consumer as such. We got out of bankruptcy. We acquired Northwest Airlines. We merged the company. We're the biggest airline in the world at that point, and still are by most measures. But we had to change the game. We had to ensure that the reliability and the quality of the experience on board allowed customers to say, hey, I'm choosing Delta because it's Delta. I'm willing to pay a premium for that service excellence.
And that was an unproven thesis in the airline industry.
Over many, many years, exactly.
How did you do it?
And well, we did it by a return to basics, by being in this shop with having the best mechanics in the world were for Delta, being able to give them the tools, the technology, the support they needed to do a better job, to make sure our reliability, our cancellation rates are the lowest, that our mechanical reliability is the best. And then over time, through the integration also of Northwest, which also brought us great skill, we were starting to separate. We were starting to rise above. People were starting to see Delta as the on-time machine, as an airline that actually met its promises. Business travelers started to adopt to it because business travelers care about schedule, they care about time, less so about price. And as a result of that, that was all starting to happen during that period. So my objective then was to ensure that we maintain that overall level of service excellence and be able to separate as a premium brand to start to get paid for it.
Part of what happened during that period, and you and I have talked about this before, was your focus on people, the people at Delta. And I should point out that the Wall Street Journal published its best companies for the future list recently, and while the overall the top companies tended to be tech companies, number one in talent, Delta Airlines. So that's out of 500 S&P 500 companies. You're a finance guy. You came from the other side of the equation. When did it occur to you that the success of your airline depended more on how you treated people than on how you treated finances?
Well, we knew we're a relational business. We're a business that, with 100,000 employees today, our people need to feel like the leadership has their back. That because our people make decisions, all day long, every day, all around the world. We have 5,000 flights we operate every single day, and leaders in our business are not present. There's an operations center, there's controls, there's training, but we put our frontline leaders out in position to lead, to lead their crews, to lead their customers, to be leaders in their community. And as a result of that, when people feel that you've got that support, that we put people first, that people really believe in, it takes time. You can't say, these are not words. This is a 24/7 operation.
Was there a moment though that it kind of hit you that, wow, this is what we have to do?
When we started focusing on what it was going to take to be a highly reliable airline, we need to put, and I felt it in my heart even before I left Delta. I talk about the values and the purpose, about making certain that this is a people-led organization. People make the difference, I believe, in all businesses, even in technology businesses.
Yeah.
It's people that matter. In fact, I think that's what you're seeing in the world today with AI and the lack of trust and the confidence of what the tech's going to do when people are removed from the equation, or at least removed from leading the equation. Keeping people at the center was key. So I learned it many years over my path. I learned it at PepsiCo, where I was before I came to Delta. And I started to be able to reinforce that with the investments we made in profit sharing. Our people earn 15% of our profits, and we've paid many billions of dollars just in the last decade to our frontline people who deserve that reward. And it's allowed us to continue to grow faster than the industry.
Well, I can tell you it pays off. I mean, you see it when you get on a plane.
I hear from customers all day long, sorry to cut you off, all day long about all sorts of things, right? Sometimes things go wrong, and I'm always on it. We're always putting people in charge to make it better. I receive many compliments about our airline. And it's never about, while they're good, it's never about the seat or the technology or the food or the airports as much. They always have the people at the center of it.
I thought it was, I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, not far from here. I thought it was because of your Southern culture, but you're not a Southerner.
I'm from New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a finance guy. But it's proven. Is they invest in the people who make the difference, that they will then take care of your customers. And our founder, over 100 years ago, Mr. Woolman, said this. That's his saying that we have on the walls of our offices to this day. Take care of your people first, who will then take care of your customers. We're in a customer-obsessed society.
Yeah.
If you're obsessed on customers, you're losing sight of the people and the processes who are going to take care of customers. I'm obsessed on our people, so that frees them to obsess on our customers.
So let's move on to COVID, because that was another shock to the system. You start to build this notion of a premium airlines, and then all of a sudden people stop flying.
Yep.
What was your reaction to that event? You can't have planned for that. There was no scenario.
There was no playbook. I've said many times, if someone had come in 30 days prior and said, be prepared, a pandemic is coming that's going to shut you down, probably would have had our security people come and take the person to off our property anyway. We were not ready for it. We've just finished our best year in our history to that point in 2019. We had great growth aspirations, great plans for the future. We were the lead keynote for CES, the Consumer Electronics Show.
I remember that
year.
Yeah.
In January, first time an airline had ever done that, and then 30 days later, the world was being shut. What it taught me, Alan, was beside just the pure shock of it, which took time to actually realize this was really happening. I mean, there was a lot of denial, I think, in the early days, was that you got to lean into your principles. You got to lean into your values. You need to make certain you understood what matters. And what mattered for us was protecting our people. Keeping the principle that made Delta great in the first place was the principle that was going to get us through, and making certain that we didn't furlough. We said, how in the world are we going to get through that? When I first said that, early days of
You
COVID.
didn't furlough?
We did not furlough a single employee through all of COVID. Only airline out there that can say that. One of the only companies in the world that could say that. And we did it because our people stepped up. We offered the voluntary separations, leaves of absence.
Good time to take a sabbatical if you want to.
Good time to take a sabbatical. We left your benefits intact.
Yeah.
We gave you travel privileges, which great, best time to travel, because no one else will try. You had the planes to yourself. And we offered people the opportunity to stage their own return whenever they wanted to come back. We had the majority of the company submit to voluntary separation. We downsized our payroll, our single biggest cost, by over 50% in a matter of months.
Wow, without
furloughing a single people, which enabled us to keep intact the culture and the difference that made.
And you also took care of your customers. You didn't fill the middle seat, which I don't know. Did any other airline do that, or
Well, it was easy in the early days because there weren't a lot of people flying to say that you were doing. We did it for upwards of 2 years.
Yeah.
And our revenue people, were not very happy with me.
Yeah.
They kept saying, "Well, no, we got to get through this." But when we went back and checked the actual numbers, because we're in an industry with a lot of data, it turned out Delta had more revenue on board its planes, maybe because of locking the middle seats, than our competitors did by selling the middle seats. People were setting and saying, Delta is the airline I'm going to choose to fly during COVID, which I believe catapulted our brand to another level coming through COVID.
Amazing.
It wasn't that COVID hit that was the problem. The fact that it was the response to it, what you did showed people who you were.
2014, you got hit by a terrible computer crisis. I was actually traveling, had a Delta ticket on the day that hit. Thousands of flights canceled, really took a week to get over it.
Right.
What did you learn from that experience?
Well, we learned resiliency is every day. And we had data center go out, our main data center. And so we didn't have sufficient backup capability. There was a fire in the data center that day. It kind of destroyed our data center. We eventually have now moved to the cloud with AWS, and we've built multiple layers of resilience and
Could not happen
redundancy
again.
within the technology. That incident can't happen again because we're not vulnerable to an on-ground episode like that. Of course, in the cloud, doesn't mean you don't have resiliency and redundancy concerns, but we're working with the world-class companies to ensure that we maintain, and we haven't seen it again. But the world now, remember cyber a couple of years ago with CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
When CrowdStrike brought us down, and we had a similar episode like, so we continue to learn through these things.
But it seems like
the learnings always make you stronger.
Yeah.
And make you better. And you got to take a positive view for this. You got to lead from the front of these. These aren't things you kind of shy away from. These are things you embrace.
You have to deal with them. But it seems like it also underscores the degree to which you're dependent on multiple partners. I mean, it could be air traffic control or TSA or that was CrowdStrike was the precipitating company involved. I mean, how do you deal with a world where so many factors are completely out of your control?
Well, we say that, but I really believe more things are within our control than not. How we show up every day, taking care of people. People understand when crisis hits. Now, no one blamed us for COVID. No one blamed us for CrowdStrike. It was unpleasant. It was difficult. It took us a number of days to recover. But the attitude of our people, the fact that we still continue to maintain our long-term focus, we don't shy away from accountability when it's necessary, and we make the investments in resiliency to get through. Our business model, by the way, has been suspect to volatility because it's a highly leveraged business model.
Yeah.
Most airlines, they have to borrow a lot of money to buy these fancy planes or fuel. Margins are thin. Delta has focused on continuing to get our balance sheet down, debt down, and create a fortress balance sheet so that we can sustain ourselves and we have the capital to continue to invest in the future because we know those days are coming.
And where did you learn leadership? I mean, did you have a mentor, a book, where does this come from?
I have had some great mentors in my career. Started my career years ago in New York with the accounting firm Pricewaterhouse before it was Cooper's.
Yeah.
And made partner there. I had people that taken an interest in my career. When I went to Pepsi, I didn't have a graduate degree. Couldn't afford grad school because I was working. I couldn't afford to stop. I had kids at the time. PepsiCo was my graduate degree.
Yeah, great leadership.
7 or 8 years I spent there, principally in the Frito-Lay organization down in Texas. Incredible people, from Wayne Calloway and many others, Roger Enrico, folks that spent time with me that I took an appreciation for. And when I got to Delta, I got a chance to start to prove my mettle and found people like Jerry Grinstein and others that have continued to take ownership of my career and point me in the direction. Mentorship, Alan, is such a understated leadership philosophy for me.
Yeah.
I think we all got here because people helped
Yep.
us get here, and people pointed out and had eyes on our back when we weren't able to see things, could look around corners we didn't know were coming. And having people take that investment in you and me is an accountability now I have to the next generation.
Are you
of
doing a
leaders.
lot of that?
Oh,
mentoring?
I do. It's one of the reasons I stay around at Delta. I've been here over 10 years, and one of the reasons why I'm still motivated and challenged is because I want to have the next generation to be even stronger and more capable, because the challenges are candidly bigger
Yeah.
than ever before, and what I can do to prepare for that.
And what's the most important piece of advice that you can give to somebody coming up?
Most important piece is to take care of your people. This is not a trite saying. I think all companies say that. I think all leaders say that. I think it's so obvious. And if it's so obvious, why is there such a lack of trust in the world today?
Ed,
If you talk at Delta, you don't see that.
you don't. Yeah.
The trust level, and you can feel it.
It's
The people feel different about what they're delivering.
Well, spread it around, please.
I'm trying.
You talked earlier about humility, but you've been a very public CEO. When I got on a plane this morning, the first voice I heard was you telling me to get ready for the flight. You've made yourself a public figure. Why is that important to your leadership?
Well, we're a big consumer business. I mean, people choose airlines for the experience that we provide. People, particularly younger consumers, want to know more about that brand. They want to know what that brand stands for. They want to know who leads that brand. They want to know that if they've got an issue, who they can hold accountable, where they can go. And as I said earlier, I get a lot of feedback from a lot of people all day long, which I love. I make myself accessible, available for that reason. And I want people to know that we're together in this, that relation. And as a result, then it was uncomfortable for me. I grew up as an accountant. This was not
natural.
This was not on my, in fact, I tell a story that when I was going to college, my dad, I said to him, I said, I went to small school in upstate New York, St. Bonaventure. What do you think I should major in? It had this major thing on the application. I had no idea what it was going to be. He said, well, I think you should be a tax accountant. You're really good in math and you're bad with people. And as a result of that, you'll always have work, but people won't have to deal with you too much. And I said, okay, so I'll try that out. And fortunately, God rest his soul, I think I've proven him wrong.
As a public figure, you've also gotten dragged into politics from time to time. I mean, the one that got a lot of attention was after the Parkland shootings. You took away a benefit from people traveling to the National Rifle Association convention, which was a pretty courageous thing to do in a state where most of the members of the state legislature are members of the NRA. Was that the right thing to do? Did you let yourself get too far into politics? How do you feel about that?
Well, you'll notice that my early entry into political matters like that were earlier in my career. And I think hopefully I've done a better job over the latter stages of my career trying to stay and offer a balanced view on times. But that was a unique situation. That was a situation in which the NRA was supporting and being candidly not stepping up to its accountability related to the shooting at Parkland. That I felt like I owed our people a leadership moment. When I saw that Delta was supporting an organization, providing discounts because you belong to an organization that was not criticizing or standing for something better for our kids than a high school shooting, I knew that we should not be affiliated with this organization. So I didn't come out and criticize what NRA was. I just said, this is not something Delta can be part of.
Yeah.
Which drew a lot of flack. But in hindsight, it mobilized action within our own employee base, within our state, within our country, to say, hey, this is a company that's standing up for what it believes.
So no regrets.
No regrets.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Wall Street Journal Delta partnership. Tell me what you're we're delighted. I mean, you're going to have access to the Wall Street Journal in your planes, and you're giving access to the Wall Street Journal to your employees.
Yes.
Both. So tell me what your thinking is.
We've
there.
created over the last number of years a platform, a knowledge platform, an entertainment platform called Delta Sync. And it started when we launched free fast Wi-Fi. These days, airlines compete all over the place. You hear about who's got the better Wi-Fi system. Delta's had the best Wi-Fi system, and all of our planes are equipped with free fast Wi-Fi, and they've been for a number of years. We set the standard, and we announced earlier this year, I'll get to your question, that we're going to Amazon Leo starting in 28 as our platform to create even better content, faster speed, better connection, and more utility. We've brought partners onto that platform who see utility in terms of having access to our customers. T-Mobile, Paramount Plus, American Express, multiple others. Uber is on there. And we're always looking to try to focus on business content and leadership content, which the Wall Street Journal is a leader in not just the US, but around the globe. And so when you're on Delta Sync, going forward, you'll find a button that you can push, and it'll give you access to all of the Wall Street Journal behind the paywall content for 24 hours. So while you're on board the plane, or even when you get off the plane,
you don't have to have a subscription.
You don't have to have a subscription. Hopefully people will see that and say, wow, that's something that was valuable to me. Maybe they'll subscribe to the journal or not. That's not our point. But it's also going to unlock access for more content than just the journal, whether it's video content or leadership library information. And then our own people, our 100,000 people, will also get free subscriptions on an annualized basis, not just a daily basis, to the content the journal provides. It's just another way that you differentiate, you separate, you bring value to the experience. Customers don't have to pay for it. And it separates Delta from the rest.
Well, we're all hoping that the Leaders video podcast will be part of the content you're offering.
Well, I'm looking forward to people watching that.
Yeah, maybe somebody's sitting and listening to this on one of your planes right now. What's next, Ed? If you look at the next 5 years, 10 years, you say the motto is keep climbing. Where are you climbing to?
The world. It's a global pursuit. Alan, do you realize only 1 in 5 people in the world have ever stepped foot on an airplane?
Wow.
That's a shocking number.
Wow.
Only 1 in 5. We look around the airplane, if planes are in the sky in the US, it seems it's ubiquitous. You can get on a plane almost by the hour to go almost anywhere you want to go. We take it for granted. It's not a service that exists in many, many parts of the world. And that's our challenge for the second century. We turned 100 years last year. Oh, first US airline to reach 100.
Yeah.
Our second century of flight is going to be about better connecting the world, creating connection, creating opportunity, creating experience. The world is in a challenging place, and it continues to face challenges over time. I'm a firm believer that when you know someone, when you can experience something, when you put yourself truly in someone else's shoes, someone else's culture, you get to understand better. That brings better collaboration, that brings better opportunity, that brings understanding, that brings peace. That brings societies that actually want to be together because they understand the power of the human connection. That's my
I hope you're right.
wish for the future, because we learned during COVID, when those lines were blocked, when they were disconnected, when people couldn't travel, that's when an awful lot of evil and distrust and the lack of familiarity, people were preyed on. We need to get back together.
Yeah. Ed, I have a lot more questions for you, but not a lot more time, so I'm going to do a speed round here, if you'll let me. First of all, do you travel in aisle or window seats?
I originally it was an aisle guy. I'm 6'3", so I'm tall. I always enjoyed kind of sticking my legs out into the aisle a little bit, because many times I am in coach. But these days I'm probably more of a window, and because I create too much commotion when I'm on the aisle.
Better for the plane. Favorite food at the Delta Sky Club? I've seen you at the Delta Sky Club, so I know you eat your own cookie.
I do. Though I haven't been in the Sky Clubs in a couple of years.
Oh, is that right?
Because I made a policy for all of our people, until we can take care of the crowding issues and the lines, that Delta people should not be going into the Sky Clubs and leaving that for customers. And I follow by example there. I was in Salt Lake City this past Sunday, traveling back to Atlanta. My family went up there. I did not.
Yeah.
And the people see me in the airport terminal. So but I'll get to your question. The Sky Clubs, by the way, are great. And Delta One Lounge in JFK is amazing. But my favorite food on a Delta flight versus a club is the Shake Shack burger.
Oh, okay. I'll keep that in mind next time. I was going to mention the chicken sausage, but that's what's your favorite Delta destination?
Oh, that's hard. Personally, West Palm Beach, Florida, because that's where I've got my second home whenever I go there. I feel like I'm a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more off the grid. But I would say for adventure, for experience, just about any place in Europe. Europe to me is amazing.
Yeah. And what do you do to relax?
I try to golf.
You get out weekly?
I try to get out weekly. I find I did not grow up golfing. I've learned it later in life. I find it's a sport that's very hard for me, that causes me to have to focus, forget about what I do for a few hours in my day job, put my phone down, not check it for a few hours, and concentrate on doing it. Where else in the world can you go to some of the most beautiful parks in the world?
Beautiful real estate.
With friends and hit a ball with a stick and have fun for several hours, and you're largely uninterrupted. Where can you do that?
Yeah.
That's what golf is.
Well, you deserve it. You've built quite an operation here. Ed, thanks so much for spending some time with me.
Alan, we appreciate you and appreciate our partnership.
Yeah, enjoy the partnership.